Seth Rollins breaks silence after Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker ambush Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. The WWE Universe is in shock, and so is Seth Rollins. After the unexpected and brutal attack by Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker on Roman Reigns and Jey Uso, Seth Rollins gives his raw, unfiltered reaction. Tensions are rising, alliances are shifting, and chaos is erupting across WWE Raw and SmackDown. Is this the beginning of a new power struggle? The footage aired without warning. Grainy at first. Dark. Then, chaos. Roman Reigns and Jey Uso lay on the cold concrete floor of the backstage arena, surrounded by shattered crates, spilled lighting gear, and two unrelenting forces standing above them. Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker. No warning. No music. No lights. Just fists, fury, and the unmistakable sounds of a betrayal caught on camera. The video was leaked just moments before Monday Night Raw went off the air. By the time the lights dimmed in the arena, it had already gone viral. What followed was not just shock, it was a seismic shift. Within an hour, social media was ablaze. Fans divided. Commentators stunned. And inside the locker room? Silence. A chilling, unfamiliar silence. The kind that signals not just a fight, but the start of war. But there was one voice everyone waited for. One man whose reaction mattered more than most. A man whose own history with Roman Reigns was long, twisted, and painful. Seth Rollins. The visionary. The architect. The man who once betrayed Roman with a steel chair. The man who had once bled with him as a brother in the Shield, and stood against him as a sworn enemy. That man had something to say. But when? And what? In the hours that followed the ambush, WWE's official channels posted a carefully worded statement. It mentioned a backstage altercation. It confirmed medical evaluations for Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. It avoided the word attack. It offered no names. But the footage didn't lie. And neither would Seth. Sources close to WWE's production team confirmed that Seth Rollins was scheduled for a closed-door interview the next day. It was meant to be a promo taping, routine. But what transpired behind that locked studio door was anything but ordinary. The cameras rolled for 15 minutes. The result? A statement that was less of a promo and more of a confession. Seth sat alone in a dark room, not in his flamboyant jackets or designer boots, but in all black. No lights behind him. Just a single beam above, casting long shadows under his eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked, not from weakness, but from something rawer. Anger? Maybe. Guilt? Possibly. But mostly, it was disbelief. What just happened to Roman Reigns? What just happened to Jey? That wasn't a rivalry. That wasn't a storyline. That was an execution. He paused. I've known Roman Reigns longer than I've known some of my own blood. I've fought him. I've bled with him. I've hated him. And I've loved him. And when I saw that footage, when I saw Bronson Reed's elbow crashing down on Roman's chest, when I saw Bron Breakker manhandle Jey like he was nothing, I didn't see a wrestling match. I saw the destruction of everything we built. This was not scripted. It couldn't be. The pain in Seth's voice was too real, too vulnerable. His breath staggered as he described the moment he first saw the footage, how his heart sank, how his hands trembled. For a man known for bravado, who often mocked pain as weakness, this was different. This was stripped down. Honest. He didn't talk about championships. He didn't talk about legacy. He talked about betrayal. The same betrayal that had once defined him, now being used against Roman. And the silence from others? Deafening. I waited, Seth admitted. I waited for someone, anyone, to step up and condemn what happened. But all I saw were rewinds and replay packages. I didn't see outrage. I didn't hear people calling out the violence. That's the problem. We've normalized this chaos. But what Bronson and Braun did, that wasn't chaos. That was calculated. That was personal. According to backstage officials, Seth arrived hours earlier than required that day. He skipped catering. He ignored his locker. He didn't speak to anyone. He went straight to the studio. One staffer described him as a man possessed. Another said he looked like he hadn't slept. And how could he? Because this wasn't just an attack on Roman and Jey. This was an attack on an entire generation. The last surviving legacy of the Shield. The final remnants of what used to be WWE's beating heart. Erased, with fists and fury. It didn't end there. Seth leaned in toward the camera, voice low, tone sharpened. Bronson. Braun. I hope you're watching this. I hope you know exactly what you've done. You've made enemies you can't outrun. You've declared war on men who built the ground you're walking on. And I don't care if you've got Heyman whispering in your ear, or if you think being new blood makes you untouchable. You made a mistake. The mention of Paul Heyman wasn't accidental. Though Heyman had yet to make a statement, his fingerprints were already all over this. Insiders believe Heyman orchestrated the alliance behind the scenes, pulling the strings while Reed and Breakker delivered the blows. It wouldn't be the first time Heyman played puppet master. But it might be his most devastating performance yet. Seth paused again, this time looking away from the camera. I've made mistakes, he whispered. I've hurt Roman. I've hurt Jey. I know what betrayal looks like from the inside out. And that's why I know this isn't over. In those last words, Seth wasn't warning the WWE Universe. He was warning Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker directly. And perhaps, himself. Because something deeper was brewing beneath the surface. WWE medical staff confirmed that Roman Reigns suffered bruised ribs and a possible mild concussion. Jey Uso, meanwhile, was treated for a shoulder contusion and internal swelling. Neither man was cleared for in-ring action. Both were said to be recovering off-site, in an undisclosed location. When asked if Roman had spoken to anyone, one staffer simply replied, "Not a word." He hasn't said a single word since it happened. And that silence echoed. In the locker room. In the production meetings. Even on commentary. Michael Cole's voice, usually so confident, shook as he replayed the moment Breakker delivered a thunderous spear into Jey's abdomen, followed by Reed's tsunami splash onto Roman through a production crate. Graves fell silent. There was no heel justification. No fanfare. Just horror. As Seth's interview wrapped, the production team remained frozen. No one moved. One camera operator, a WWE veteran of over 10 years, said it was the most haunting promo he had ever filmed. It wasn't a performance. It was a man unraveling. Backstage agents have since reported that Rollins has requested direct communication with Triple H and WWE legal regarding Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker's contracts. Some believe he's lobbying for a suspension. Others think he's preparing to go after them himself. But what remains clear is this: Seth Rollins is no longer playing mind games. He's not building a feud. He's preparing for a reckoning. And it's not just about revenge. It's about justice. Later that evening, a cryptic tweet appeared on Rollins' official account. No words. Just a single image, the heel of a black wrestling boot, covered in dust, pressing down on shattered glass. No caption. No context. But everyone understood. The glass was the Shield. The boot? His. And perhaps, a reminder that no one knows betrayal like Seth Rollins. Still, as WWE officials scramble to rewrite storylines and sponsors grow nervous about the violence that unfolded, questions loom larger than ever. What was the motive? Why now? Was this a power play by Heyman to crown a new tribal beast in Breakker? Is Reed the enforcer of a darker empire forming in silence? And where does Seth stand in this fracture? The WWE Universe hasn't seen Roman Reigns since. He's gone dark. No video statements. No cryptic tweets. No bloodline rallies. Just an absence. An absence that says more than any promo ever could. Meanwhile, whispers grow louder. Some say Jey Uso is blaming himself. That he invited Roman backstage that night to reconcile. That this entire ambush was the result of a peace offering gone wrong. And in the middle of it all? Seth. Not as champion. Not as architect. But as a witness to something he helped create, and now can no longer control. If this is the beginning of a new power struggle in WWE, it didn't start with a match. It started with a betrayal. With a beating. With silence. And with Seth Rollins, finally breaking it. In the hours following Seth Rollins' statement, a ripple effect spread through the WWE locker rooms. Across Raw and SmackDown, tensions were no longer simmering, they were boiling over. Superstars who had once been confident in their alignments were now second-guessing everything. The attack on Roman Reigns and Jey Uso wasn't just an isolated incident, it was a message. And Seth Rollins, with his thunderous silence turned explosive confession, had become the emotional epicenter of that fallout. Backstage sources claimed that Damian Priest was among the first to approach Rollins following the interview. Not as an adversary, but as a concerned colleague. Their conversation was brief, hushed, and took place in a shadowed corridor behind the production area. No microphones. No witnesses. Only a single production assistant overheard one line as Priest placed a hand on Rollins' shoulder, "Whatever this becomes, don't let it consume you." But it already had. Seth Rollins hadn't just spoken out. He had cracked open a door to a war no one was ready for. And now, with Roman Reigns sidelined, the question shifted from what happened to what comes next. It wasn't long before Bronson Reed finally issued his own chilling response. No interview. No public statement. Just a dimly lit Instagram reel. 10 seconds long. Reed sitting on a steel chair in an empty gym. No shirt. Bruised knuckles. And behind him, a tribal necklace crushed beneath his boot. The caption? He never saw it coming. If there was any doubt that this was personal, it was gone now. Bron Breakker followed with a clip of his own. Shot from the top of a parking structure, wind whipping through his hair. He looked directly into the camera and said, "This isn't Roman's yard anymore. It's ours now." Then he turned and walked into the darkness. The internet exploded. Fans divided into camps. Hashtag Team Rollins. Hashtag New Era Breaker. Hashtag Protect the Tribal Chief. Even now, no one could agree on who was truly behind this coup, or what the endgame was. But one man had decided to act. At WWE headquarters, internal memos began circulating. Triple H was reportedly furious, not at the attack itself, but at how it had caught everyone off guard. He had been kept in the dark. No script changes. No security alerts. The attack on Roman and Jey had not been sanctioned. It was a real moment in a scripted world. And now Seth Rollins had escalated it further. A meeting was called. Emergency. Offsite. Seth arrived early again. No entourage. No title belt. Just a black hoodie pulled low over his face. Triple H entered through a separate entrance. The two men sat in silence for several minutes before a single word was exchanged. "What do you want to do about this?" Hunter finally asked. Seth's reply was short. "I want to finish it." That was all Triple H needed to hear. According to insiders, plans were fast-tracked for an unsanctioned confrontation. Not a match. Not a pay-per-view segment. A sanctioned purge. The goal: remove Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker before they turned WWE into something unrecognizable. But Seth had conditions. He didn't want allies. No Kevin Owens. No Cody. No Sammy. This wasn't a team effort. It was personal. A reckoning for the sins of silence. For the years of betrayal he himself had once authored, now coming back full circle. In the days that followed, Seth disappeared from public view. No interviews. No backstage segments. But whispers confirmed he was still watching. Still waiting. Until one night, he showed up. Unannounced. No entrance music. The Raw arena was mid-match, Mustafa Ali vs Ricochet, when the lights dimmed unexpectedly. The crowd roared, expecting a technical glitch or run-in. Instead, the Jumbotron lit up with a live feed. Seth Rollins. In the parking lot. Hoodie on. Hands gloved. Breathing heavily. And beside him, 2 empty chairs. He spoke into the camera with a calm that chilled. "You two know where to find me." Then the feed cut. The crowd erupted. Commentators were left speechless. Was this a trap? A peace talk? A challenge? Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker didn't answer. But Paul Heyman did. That same night, Heyman posted a photo on X, formerly Twitter, of a chessboard mid-match. 1 queen missing. 1 pawn flipped. His caption, "Control the board. Control the kingdom." It was the first time Heyman had acknowledged anything publicly since the attack. And it confirmed what many feared, he wasn't just behind this. He was leading it. The creation of a new empire. A new bloodline. And in his way, stood Seth Rollins. But Rollins wasn't the only one unraveling. Word soon leaked from a hospital in California. Roman Reigns had finally broken his silence, privately. He was awake. Conscious. And reportedly furious. Not just at the betrayal, but at Jey. At the fact that it had been Jey who invited him backstage that night. At the fact that it was Jey who asked for peace. That request had nearly killed him. Sources close to Roman claim that a phone call between him and Seth happened just 48 hours later. The contents of that call? Unknown. But what is known, is what happened after. Seth cancelled all media appearances. He stopped answering text messages, even from close allies. And when asked what his next step was, he simply replied, "The storm's already here. I'm just building the eye." Meanwhile, Bronson Reed made his first public appearance since the attack during a SmackDown Dark segment. No music. No fanfare. Just him walking slowly to the ring while security surrounded him on all sides. Fans booed. Some chanted "Shield Killer." Reed smirked. And raised a single fist into the air. It was no longer just an ambush. It was a movement. And yet, no one had seen Bron Breakker since. Until he arrived, unexpectedly, on NXT. Standing in the center of the ring with a mic in his hand, Breakker cut a promo so cold, so controlled, that WWE posted it almost immediately after the show aired. Roman Reigns stood for tradition. Jey Uso stood for loyalty. And Seth Rollins? He stood for pride. We broke all three. And now, we build from the ruins. The crowd booed. But they also listened. This wasn't the start of a rivalry. This was the foundation of a regime. And as the lights dimmed again that night, with Breakker standing tall in NXT and Reed looming on SmackDown, the WWE landscape had never felt more unstable. Backstage producers are reportedly rewriting multiple upcoming scripts. Titles may be vacated. Matches cancelled. Triple H is said to be considering a radical move, something not done in years. A WWE-wide summit. Not in front of fans. Not for show. Behind closed doors. With only one goal, stop this war before it consumes everyone. And in the middle of it all, Seth Rollins. A man haunted by his past. Driven by his mistakes. And now forced to be something he never wanted to be again, the Shield. Not the faction. Not the brand. the weapon. A force meant to protect. To absorb damage. To break bones, if necessary. And he's ready. Because this time, the betrayal wasn't his. But the response? That's going to be all him. By the following week, the weight of Seth Rollins' silence had become deafening. WWE fans waited with bated breath for what he would do next. No one knew when, or how, he'd strike. But everyone agreed on one thing: something was coming. The tension was no longer confined to WWE arenas. It was spilling into podcasts, roundtables, and international news coverage. ESPN ran a segment titled "Is This the Fall of the Tribal Order?" While Bleacher Report's front page simply read, "Rollins ready to burn it down, again." Inside WWE HQ, there were already talks of containment. The story had transcended wrestling. Seth Rollins was no longer just a superstar. He was a symbol. Of retaliation. Of reckoning. Of legacy striking back. Then came Monday. Monday Night Raw was expected to be uneventful. A tag match. A contract signing. Nothing groundbreaking. But 30 minutes into the show, everything changed. The arena lights cut out. The Titantron flickered. And a new feed rolled. Black and white. Surveillance style. A dark room. Stone walls. A table in the center. Sitting at that table? Seth Rollins. Alone. A single candle flickering in front of him. His voice cut through the silence like a knife. This isn't just about Roman. Or Jey. Or even me. This is about the soul of WWE. The screen cut to a slow-motion replay of the ambush: Breakker's spear, Reed's crushing blow, Roman gasping for air. Then back to Rollins. "Paul Heyman, you taught me the game. You once said power is perception. And right now, the perception is, you're winning. But the truth? The truth is you just woke up something I buried a long time ago." He leaned closer, eyes burning. An architect never forgets how to rebuild. Especially after a demolition. Then the screen turned to static. No music played. No explanation given. The announcers were frozen. The audience? Speechless. For the rest of Raw, that tension never broke. Every promo, every match, overshadowed by the looming threat of what Rollins might do next. And then, the unthinkable happened. On SmackDown that same week, just before the main event, a chaotic scene unfolded backstage. Security guards were running. Camera operators scrambling. Screams echoed down the corridor. The feed finally cut to the backstage garage. A production truck was on fire. Not smoking. Burning. And spray-painted in red across its side were two words: "Payback Lives." Security rushed in. Fire crews scrambled. The show went off the air early. And WWE officials knew then, they had lost control. The next morning, an emergency press release was issued by WWE Corporate. It condemned dangerous unsanctioned behavior and promised a full internal investigation. No names were mentioned. But the implication was clear. They were pointing fingers at Seth Rollins. But Rollins was 2 steps ahead. Later that day, he posted a new video. Short. Quiet. Just him standing in front of the burned-out wreckage. Behind him, smoke billowing into the sky. He didn't say a word. He just lit a match. Tossed it onto the scorched ground. And walked away. The caption read, "An eye for an eye." Inside the WWE locker rooms, paranoia set in. Bronson Reed began traveling with private security. Bron Breakker refused to do press without his new faction nearby. And Paul Heyman? Now rarely seen in person. Communicating only through pre-taped segments. It was working. Seth Rollins had thrown the entire system into a tailspin.